slides up so long. So Patricia Flores is currently the Global Academy Manager of IFM Organics International. Patricia holds an MSc in Resource Management from the University of Edinburgh. She also has a forestry degree from the National Agrarian University of La Molina in Peru. And she also holds an agroecology diploma as part of postgraduate studies from the University of Berkeley in California. Patricia is an amazing contributor for today because she holds over 20 years experience in the PGS practice. So Patricia, thank you so much for making time to kickstart this session for us, sharing your global perspective.
Okay, thank you so much for the introduction. Thank you so much also for the invitation. It's a great pleasure to be here with you. I know how much efforts you are putting on this PGS Southern Africa network. I'm very happy to be here with all of you. And also because I have seen in the list of participants attendees today, some familiar names. So I'm very happy that Federica is also here because she has a lot of contribution. She has given a lot of her work and efforts on what we have been doing as IFOAM, globally speaking, with PGS. So having said this, yes, I would like to give a sort of insights regarding PGS, globally speaking, but also I'm Latin America, from Latin America, as you know, from Peruvian, and we have been working in PGS for so long. We are celebrating exactly 20 years next year. So of our first international workshop on what we call at that moment participatory certification. And we organized that in the south of Brazil because Brazil was at that moment the epicenter of PGS in Latin America. We started to work actually even before 2004. I believe that by the late 90s, the first prototypes of PGS started to appear. And by 2002, we had the first regional meeting with the Latin American agroecological movement to talk about this in 2002, I remember very well. And that news came to IFOAM, and at that moment, IFOAM took it in a very positive way. I remember Gunnar Rundgren was the president of IFOAM at that moment, and he said, okay, his speech in that workshop in 2004 in Brazil was, I don't know where is this going to, but I think it is worth to go through this pathway. And I think those words were very with a lot of wisdom, because we were really starting at that moment, and we didn't know where all these experiences, this new approach, tools, if this new system will be delivering the foreseen benefits that we were looking for. And that meeting, it was global. We have representatives from all over the world, from all the continents, and we all had some experience to share. But previous to that meeting, I would like to mention that the first PGS, as it is, as we know it nowadays, started in a cooperative, Colmeia, and that's Colmeia means where the bees live, the hives. It means bee hives, and it's really a cooperative that started with farmers' organizations to deliver food in local food markets, and also catering, and they were the first PGS actually who started in the 70s even, no? So it was a long time that Colmeia started and gave the inspiration to Brazilians. And then Brazilians started with PGS in organic to find a different way to handle the certification system that was not according to their beliefs or the economies or a particular position that these family farmers had in the south of Brazil. And this is how it came and shaped. And they were the inspiration in Latin America and afterwards towards the whole planet, to say it. And this is our last figures of that are reported in this The World of Organic Agriculture book, this annual book that Federica, for example, has permanently worked on, and the last figures were work with Sara Anselmi and Flavia Castro from IFOAM, and it shows us really a very interesting trend on how the peak of PGS experiences and systems started to grow in a very significant way from 2018 onwards. Of course, most of these producers that are certified with PGS they are Indians. They come from India. More than 1 million, almost 1 million, almost more than 1 million belong to India. But that doesn't mean that the other countries, which are very important also in terms of increasing and getting more, being more visible to policymakers, being more visible to consumers, are also important in other countries, such as in Brazil, which are more than 8,000, in Peru, more than almost 2,000, and so on. It is also important to mention that, for example, in Brazil, when it comes to being implemented, the law, the regulation, PGS started to increase a lot, and the same happened in Chile. So regulation, we have to make an effort on see how regulations are really contributing in making it more easy to create PGS along a country or not. And in the case of Chile and Brazil, there were two successful stories, but it is not always the case, as I will mention now with, I don't know what is happening with my computer here, as I will mention to you right now. Okay. Yeah, this is the map. This map is in the website of iPhone. The good news is that for many, you by yourself can update information of PGS here. Before it was made by the staff of iPhone, but now you are able to update, give the right figures, request to be identified, because the visibility of this kind of maps that is very powerful to work when we are thinking on creating or developing new public policies, or to improve the policies that are already in place, to consider PGS as a viable and reliable system for guarantees for organic production. And also, I would like to invite you to make use of the toolkit that we have several knowledge products, manuals, guidance on how to develop your own PGS, how to monitor it. And so the last document that we have produced was because we have an interesting, very inspiring project, the Mountain Partnership initiative, that is working with PGS for mountain products all along in several countries in the world. And with them, we work on a document that we found it necessary, especially for the bottleneck of farmers, on how to register their activities and how do they document. So this field notebook is new. And if you visit there in the website, you can see all these tools that you can access, but this is the last one. Unfortunately, it is now in Spanish, but it will be very soon in French and in English to have a better access around the world. So this is the kind of things that we are continuously working on to try to ease the most challenging aspects of the system, and that is documentation and registration of activities are one of these main things. And to end, because I know that we have very limited time, we were asked to share about some main challenges, lessons learned in PGS. So looking back the 20 or more than 20 years, as I was telling you, on PGS, I would say that these main topics, and probably you will find more, but I would like to stop on these main five things that we found and we continuously talk about on how to improve. The first one has to do with autonomy and participation. In many places, especially in Peru, where I come from, we design, we shape it in a participatory way. We expect that not only farmers, but some other like a third eye looking at the system that could be consumers or institutions in a certain territory that are working together and they're part of the system. And we found that many times, in being intentional or not, this responsibility, is handled by one organization that are not relying on the farmers' grassroots organization. And that is a careful thing to pay attention, because in a way we are giving the power to institutions that are not part of the core group of the system. So although with very well intention, but that is weakening on how we can strengthen from inside to the outside and not the other way around. So that autonomy is very important to consider, and not to give the power to supporting organizations that are not part of the core group. A second aspect is about on how we work on this territorial approach that involves local governments. And this means that to create a PGS means that we have a market, yes, an emerging local domestic market, but also how it is embedded in a territorial dynamic, and how we can better interact with the different organizations that are in place in that territory, so that we have a better enabling context to develop PGS. We have seen very beautiful experiences around the world that have invested a lot of time, efforts, human resources, financial resources, and they cannot sustain in time because they are not really an enabling environment to work on PGS, and they are like exhausted after so many years trying to make it work. So it is important that we can have a special support coming from a wide public, not only consumers, but also institutions, social movements, other organizations, networks, collaborative groups that are in place, so that we can create a more enabling environment. And that goes together with a third point that has to do with support and regulations. Many times we are seeking for being acknowledged in those, especially in those countries where PGS is not recognized as a valid system or a formal system for the organic regulation. And that there are many examples that when we are finally recognized, it comes to be a very difficult situation to try to comply with all the requirements that the government is asking. So normally they increased the paperwork, they increase all these traceability aspects, and then it turned to be like an internal control system of a third-party certification system, and taking us little by little or very quick, depending on how the pressure that the government gave, taking apart from the principles and the values of PGS. And that has happened in many countries. I will not mention specifically here, but that is happening, and we're still struggling on trying to make them understand that it not necessarily means a lot of paper or a very demanding traceability system, when there are other ways and other means to prove that we are doing it in the correct way, in an organic way. And that is linked on how we also bring a highlight on what we call the biocultural assets or agricultural assets that we have in the territory, the diversity, the identity of this territory that is more and more coming together with let's say it, biodistricts, organic regions, and so that we can have multiple stakeholders looking in the territory, a PGS as a tool, but to bringing us food of high quality, high nutritious food, but also food that is representing the identity of that territory. And PGS versus ICS, try to not mix them, they are different things. Participation is one of the values of the system, and that is in a certain way in conflict with the principle of this ISO, this ISO standard for third-party certification that works with impartiality, and also transparency in the system, is one of the other values, and that is also in conflict with this other principle that is demanded for third-party certification, which is confidentiality. So they are not the same, and many people mix them. Okay, this is a sort of low-cost ICS, and it is not. No, values are here colliding, and this is why it is important that we have very clear that aspect. And that also goes along with terminologies. And when you talk with the policymakers, this is something that you have to take a lot of attention, because when they start to use the same terminology as it is in ICS, and we are little by little also stepping in a different rationale that will I'm finalizing, that will take us to one international system. And last, PGS is about capacity building and empowerment of people. And I think all of us who are here today has to do with that. And we have to monitor really how much we are improving in these capacities, so that we can also step on advocacy and other related relations that we have. And in PGS in many countries have become to be advocates also for better public policies for organic production. Yeah, thank you. Sorry for taking some minutes additional.
Well, Patricia, thank you so much. This has been such an insightful and, sorry, let me show a video, powerful contribution. The concepts that you unpack there really shed light on a lot of, I think, problems that PGS are encountering. This mix with ICS is seminal. And I've got lots of questions, but I think I want to open the floor to people in the room. So I think if you just want to put hands up, and we can also take questions in the Q&A if you don't want to be raising hands. Santatise, please help me if I don't see any hands. I have a first question for you, Patricia. You know, you hinted that it might not be that advisable to seek government recognition. And I think a lot of PGS groups are wanting that, because there's a bit of a dichotomy, right, between wanting that public support that you refer to in a localized way. So maybe it's more linking with districts and municipal level, but at the same time, if you are a recognized entity or body by national government, you have more clout, right, in working with local government institutions. So are you explicitly stating that it is, from your experience, maybe advisable to stay away from this seek for recognition, which in the case of South Africa, we, I think, are going down that route? And if so, what are the alternative mechanisms that you mentioned to get that recognition? I think you hinted at it, it's the localized way, but can you expand a bit on that?
Yeah, okay, yes, it is important that we distinguish these different levels of governance that we have. The national government, many times we have to go there because the regulation is national. But there are a lot of things that we can do at the local, regional level with municipalities and districts. Actually, in Peru, we have 20 years of not being recognized, but the local governments were recognizing it through decrees, but they were colliding with a national regulation. So there was like a sort of confronting legal framework to speak as a country, to say it. What I would say, I mean, the experience of Brazil is very interesting because they delayed intentionally the time to be recognized. They wanted to be very strong. They wanted to have very clear the procedures, very clear what the objective, the vision of PGS, so that they can be in a better position to advocate and to give solutions. So it is not only to claim that the other certification is not really working for them, but also giving here we have something that is proving that is working. So this is why Brazil took so long in getting the organic regulation with PGS included, while the other countries were just rushing in getting acknowledged or to get a regulation without PGS, and then getting the acknowledgement took a long time, but also the mindset of policymakers were not ready to include it as we would like to have it. So in certain countries, for example, and it depends much on the culture. So I would say that you have to have a very good reading, understanding of what is happening in your countries to see if it is the right moment, if you are strong enough, if there are the right persons also in the government, so they can listen and include your vision on how you will like to regulate PGS, to say it. Chile were very pragmatic, and this is why Chile increased a lot of the number of PGS there. But then if you go to Peru, I mean, we have an increase, and Mexico really are struggling in getting more people recognized as PGS. And there is, I think, a hand being raised.
Yeah, Olawumi, one of your is giving off sound. I don't know if you can mute them all.
Sasha, can I just make a quick comment? Sasha, if I can just say that as participants, the chat is disabled and we can't put in the chat box who we are and where we're from. And I think Ntatisa was thinking that that might have been linked to the muting of everybody, but it's not. The chat is still disabled, although I can speak. Thanks.
Okay, apologies for that. We will be working on it in the background. Please do drop your questions in the Q&A so long, because I can see people can type in there, and we will invite Patricia to, respond to these in the writing so that we make sure everything is addressed. I would like to ask Kate to unmute and ask a question, followed by Mzi, please. So Kate, over to you.
Sorry, Kate. Sorry,
Yeah.
Kate, before you ask a question, can I suggest in the meantime that everybody introduce themselves in the Q&A box so that we don't hold everybody up.
Tati, your line is not so good.
Okay, no problem. I'll write it in the chat.
Hello.
No, Ntatisa, I wouldn't want to do that because it's going to confuse the Q&A. Let's hold on that and let's hear Kate's question for now.
Thank you very much, Sasha, and thank you, Patricia, for the presentation. I'm Kate Nakatuga from Uganda. I just wanted clarification on principle number 4 of PGS, which was where you were comparing PGS with ICS, and then you said PGS is participatory and not impartiality. And I'm just thinking of the other certification, because actually I'm an internal auditor for standards. And I didn't understand that comparison. How do the other standards, or how does ICS become impartial? What makes it look like it is not, people are not participating? I don't know. Because I missed the first presentation, maybe that's where this.
Okay. Kate, we got your question. This was the first presentation, but I think Patricia can respond to your need for clarification on ICS versus PGS. If you may, please, Patricia, briefly.
Yeah, sure. So when we mention this difference, is because that in PGS, one of the values is participation, and that in a way takes a lot of partiality. I mean, we are reviewing, we are having peer reviews among farmers who are part of the system, all consumers, all the diversity of stakeholders are part of the system, and we are checking between us, no? And so that is in a way, apparently, I would say apparently taking impartiality, because we are partial, we know each other. But what brings this impartiality, or trying to get a bit, trying to get a distance within the different stakeholders that are part of the same system, is that we are many of them, and also that we, in different stages, they participate as these institutional organizations that are part in the same territory. In that way, they can give also this impartiality, to say some third eye looking on how the system works. And in the other case, it is, I mean, the impartiality is because you are hiring a third party, that's why it's called third party, and it's an inspector coming to make the check-ins and see if it is complying according to the standard, and it is not anybody related to you in that way. But again, we can also say how impartial is that if the service is being paid by the operator, they call it operator. But it's kind of discussion there, but I would say that this impartiality element also can be achieved in the sense that we are a diversity of stakeholders and that they are participating in different levels as well with different roles.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. And I think Mzi, you wanted to come in with a question as well?
Yes, Sasha. Good morning, everybody. Yes, I just wanted to find out about harmonization of the need for PGS autonomy and the need for administrative support. Because yes, I agree, we have to sustain that and enhance the autonomy of PGS. But I think there are limitations and challenges based on administrative support, the requirements there in terms of time and resources. And then you will require additional support either from the government or from the NGOs that might impact negatively on the autonomy of the PGS. How do you harmonize those? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I would say I will be very honest to say that most of the PGS in Latin America that started, except from Brazil probably, or Chile, who came later, but in other countries like in Bolivia, Peru, and those the first PGS in developing countries started with a lot of support from cooperation, right? Development projects for rural areas. And they thought that it would, these agencies working on development and cooperation thought that it was an important tool to support, to develop rural areas and better livelihoods. So this is how it started. So it was very much dependent on external funds. But lately, I would say that we have to have like a payment that will allow you to have the minimum to operate, no? So each farmer is paying a certain sum so that they can cover this administration aspect that needs to be covered, no, in a way. So when they come to the markets and they see how beneficial it is for them and they're getting better margins, better profits for the products, they are very, they're very happy to contribute with the system and pay what they agree. And this is another thing, it's a social agreement, it's a social process, and they decide how much they can charge to the farmers, and they can regulate that, if they're all paying the same, or they can distinguish who pays more or whatever. So this is also one of the other things. And the last thing that I would like to mention is that enabling public policies, as it happened in Brazil, giving a different dynamic in the different territories in Brazil, can also make it easier for the administration aspect. The number of PGS that were increased a lot in Brazil after the regulation, because they were prepared for that moment, came together with other measures, as for example, research, as a public procurement, which is very important for Brazil, and it is taken as an example and has been awarded as best practice in public policies and in other countries that are implementing. That turned to be so important that the local economies completely shift and change for better. And this allowed that PGS can strengthen this aspect of administration. So not everything is inside in the PGS as a solution for administration, but also many of these answers can be given if you allow this dialogue with local governments and public procurement measures and other kind of plans or programs that can allow a better performance of PGS and be more self-sufficient so that they can perform better. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mzia. I hope that answered your question, and I think it echoes your opening, statement on the takeaway lessons that you shows the importance of keeping the power in the system. So I think dialogue and collaboration is important as long as we have in mind that the power must remain with the farmer organization that are basically the base of the PGS groups. I would like to allow one last question because we're going to be encroaching on our next speaker's time. Federica Varini, please ask your question and we will then ask Patricia to briefly respond.
Hi, Patricia. Nice to talk with you again. I'm very happy I found out about this series of webinars, actually just by chances yesterday by checking the PGS South Africa website. So yeah, great that you're organizing this. And well, as a question or maybe rather like a comment and something that we can maybe also discuss during the whole webinar with the speakers is I found very interesting the 5 points that you highlighted, but I find that one point is missing, which is market access and demand for the products, because I think actually the market component it should in the end be a very strong driver for the PGS. Of course, we know PGS is much more than certification. It's about the process, also building capacity, building participation. But in the end, I guess what makes the PGS sustainable on the long run is really the capacity of building, like, and yeah, be set up in a space where there is market demand, or the association. And I think that's also fit well with the topic of your session today, that there is then an organic movement.
Thanks, Federica.
behind.
You're fading away a little bit, but
Sorry. Okay. Yeah, anyway, I was just wanted to highlight this market aspect that I think it's very important. Yeah.
No, definitely. Yes, Federica, market is an important driver. We cannot create PGS without having markets. It's a precondition even, no? But I just to take a bit of to be careful with that, because many times we say we cannot do anything because there is no market here. And then of course we never start. So it is important, yes, markets, and we can see the potential of our own local markets. Territorial market is such a beautiful approach also within this approach, within this aspect of territorial approaches. And I think that even if it is very emerging at very early stage, that market, it is worth it to start with if we are combining with these other elements. But by sure, PGS doesn't make sense if there are no markets for that. Thank you, Federica, for complimenting.
thank you so much for this. And Annie, sorry, I see your hand and I see your questions in the chat box. We will come back to questions to Patricia in the end, if you don't mind. I just want to give a fair opportunity to all our contributors today. So long, Patricia, if you can just look at the Q&A, there's a couple of questions for you. Let's start by answering them there, and then we can go back to them later on. So our next speaker for this session is an example from another country, actually. We have in our panel today also someone from the Philippines. And Maria Rorina Buena, if you want to please start sharing your screen while I introduce you. So Maria studied agriculture, and she also has a certificate in laws and policy on biodiversity conservation. She earned a master's degree in management in the University of the Philippines. With this great academic credentials, Maria earned fellowship programs in advanced organic agriculture development in direct marketing masterclass supported by SIDA and FAO. So Rorina and I actually met at an IFOAM event a few years ago. And basically Rorina has been involved in driving PGS in the Philippines for many years. She's been with MASIPAC for 23 years. MASIPAC is a farmer scientist partnership for development in the Philippines. And there she spent many years training farmer organizations in the field of organic agriculture production and certification, business and marketing management, and the development of PGS groups. And also you've been, I think, lobbying very strongly to get a recognition of PGS groups in the Philippines. So I think you will be expanding on this, maybe echoing the point that was being made by Patricia earlier on. And just to finish on your presentation, Maria is now the regional coordinator for Masipak Luzon, and she sits as Asia representative to the IFON PGS committee. Thank you so much for being with us today, and over to you, Maria. Rowena.
Thank you, Sasha. Yeah, thank you for the introduction. Good evening, everyone from our side of the world, and good morning. So I will be presenting the Philippine experience. Now, I was just listening to Patricia regarding recognition, and I think our case will be a good example of that. If it's really worth, recognizing PGS and what are the pros and cons. So. Okay, so I will be sharing with you 8 points. I will not go through that, but we actually are Masipag is actually part of the PGS, the alternative certification workshop in Brazil, where the PGS started. No, so our PGS, Masipag Farmers Guarantee System, which is Masipag's PGS. Started in 2004 as well, right after the PGS conference in Brazil. So next year we will also be celebrating our 20th anniversary. And in the Philippines, actually, organic agriculture, specifically, organic certification, only started in the early 2000s. So it's certification before that is not really a big thing, but organic agriculture has been practiced by many farmers and promoted by many NGOs. And Masipag, my organization, is one of the organization at the forefront of that. And so as I mentioned, we started our very own PGS in August of 2004, and we are very well, we don't really have a recognition by the government, and even the government don't have any policy regarding recognition or certification procedures. On we are freely doing what we want to do with regards to certification of organic products. However, in 2004, because mainly of the push by the organic sector in the country, there is this executive order by the president to institute the organic agriculture program by the government. So since then, there's this National Organic Agriculture Board, the program. The first Philippine National Standards for Organic Agriculture was crafted, and the first certifying body, third-party certifying body, was accredited by the government. So mainly, the organic agriculture program is to, enhance global competitiveness, because the government sees organic agriculture as a great opportunity to market the Filipino products abroad. So the mindset is still export. So that's what the government was aiming in 2004. But in 2010, because the organic agriculture is becoming very popular in the Philippines, so we have this one lawmaker who push for organic agriculture, that there should be an organic agriculture law in the country. And mainly the policy is to recognize and support the central role of farmers, indigenous people, and other stakeholders at the grassroots in this program, because there are a lot of indigenous communities in the Philippines, and 75% of the population are still farmers. However, in Section 17 of the law, it says that only third-party certification is allowed to be labeled as organically produced. So there's this restriction with regards to labeling of organic products, which is not there before the law. So there were a lot of reactions by the saying that we were already organic farmers even before the passage of the law, and now we cannot label our products organic only because we don't have money for third-party certification. So this was the concern of the farmers, and that's when we started campaigning for PGS recognition. At first, we were very skeptical of how the government would, react or respond, and that's why we have done a lot of activities, lobbying. So we have PGS conferences annually. So this is to mainstream PGS with local government units, other NGOs, and church-based organizations. There are a lot of church-based organizations here in the country. And we have established the network, to advocate for PGS and to lobby for PGS recognition. So PGS Pilipinas started in 2011. So, but before that, of course, the government is their priority actually is more of the conventional farming. They see organic agriculture as only as a technology. It's not actually for the sustainability of farming systems and the livelihood of the farmers. So only in the 27 billion peso budget of the government, only 1 billion is allocated for organic agriculture. So that's how small the allotment of the government to support organic farmers in the country. And of course, the orientation of the government is for export, not really to support the consumers at the local or the national level. And the export requirement doesn't match the production capability of the farmers because most of them are small scale. When I say small scale, it's really very small. Like some farmers would only have 0.25 hectares or 2,500 square meters of organic production area. So that's really very small. And some of them would actually do organic farming to support the needs of the family first. So the market is targeted to niche markets. So most of the organic markets are located in the metro cities. So many consumers have this impression that organic agriculture, organic products are only for the rich people. And basically because the price also is very high, there's this orientation that since organic is quite laborious to do, the organic agriculture is quite laborious. So it's the products is quite expensive. And then certified organic inputs are also not readily available in the local market, or even for organic seeds, they are not readily available. And of course, the liberalization of the market for imported organic products. We have this opening of the Asian market for all products, not only organic. So we are quite we would want to ensure, of course, that the farmers is ready for the competition, especially for countries where the organic sector is supported by their governments. So with regards to PGS Pilipinas, though, the main objective of the organization is to bridge the gap between farmers and consumers and develop the domestic market by helping farmers avail inexpensive certification. So we have done a lot of training and conferences with small-scale farmers, NGOs, church-based organization, all organizations, and we have done a lot of lobbying and networking from local to international partners. Like we visited IFOAM head office in Bonn twice, and to discuss with IFOAM, the IFOAM team. Of course, Federica was there also, Flavia and Cornelia, to discuss how to lobby for PGS recognition in our countries. In 2013, they sent Andre Loy, to discuss with our national leaders, why is it important to have PGS recognized in our country, especially that we have a lot of small-scale producers. And then, of course, we also have a lot of PGS development with a lot of farmers organizations in the country. And so, in 2020, since 2010, when we started with PGS, lobbying, development, and recognition, the number of PGS initiatives in the country is increased. So, but as you can see in the areas in hectares, it's really very small. But the producer certified are more than 3,000 individual farmers. So what we have done so far in the Philippines is that when the government saw that there is a need to recognize PGS, and the third-party certification is not really gaining ground because of the expensive cost, and of course the government is subsidizing. No, they are actually paying for the third-party fees, which is they said that third party is actually draining the budget for organic agriculture. So that's when they started to look at PGS, no, as a certification system for many farmers in the country. So in 2013, there's a resolution for the extension of implementation of Section 17, meaning the labeling of organic product. And then in 2016, the Bureau of Agriculture and Fisheries Standards of the Department of Agriculture started to draft the guidelines for PGS. We have used a lot of information and materials from IFOAM here. The guidelines, you know, the self-evaluation form which the government can use in terms of recognizing PGS, and the guidelines, no, on how to implement PGS. And in December 23 of 2020, the President signed RA 11511, which is the amendment for the Organic Agriculture Act. This amendment has particular focus on PGS recognition, implementation, and support. So the law, the amended law, aside from the PGS recognition, there is a budget for the organic agriculture program, which is very small in the previous law. And there is a subsidy for PGS certified farmers. It's very small, but there's still a subsidy, no? And they have instituted the implementing structure down to the community level, not only at the national. And they have asked PGS Pilipinas to have representation in the policy-making body, which is the National Organic Agriculture Board. They have established seed centers, which is very important for farmers. And then there is also a national campaign for organic agriculture by the government. So this has been included in the amended act, which we see is very positive for not only for PGS, but for organic agriculture generally. But however, we have a lot of calls, no? I would like to skip here and go to the key takeaways. So recognition is more than recognizing the initiative. There are pros and cons. Like what Patricia was saying, we don't really recommend lobbying for PGS recognition if there is no need, like what we experience in the Philippines. There is a call for recognition because there is a restriction in the law. But right now, there are a lot of you know, the bureaucratic system by the government that they have to submit a lot of documents. They have to get mayor's permit. They have to get attestation from the local government. They have to get, they have to really polish their documentation. They have to have manual of operation, and the standards have to be ready to be able to be accredited. But if there is a need to be recognized, we say that building critical mass is crucial, you know, very important to strengthen the mass base, meaning the farmers, the consumers, and the stakeholders. And of course, no one to compromise, because if you lobby for PGS recognition or other law on that matter, there will always be compromise. You have to compromise, and from our experience, we say that we cannot compromise the basic principles and the guidelines of PGS. But the government is they don't know anything about PGS. We have been doing PGS for the last 20 years, and we saw that they are actually also learning. And with that learning, we also want to help them. And we do not stop discussing, lobbying, and negotiating with them until now, even with the passage of the law, because they saw that PGS is not really about certification, only certification. The organization have to be organized, the group of farmers have to be organized, the group of farmers need to be strengthened to be able to do PGS. So now they are understanding that, and with that, we saw that with that learning, we don't want to leave them, and let them, do all the dirty work, and make a PGS more bureaucratic for the farmers. So we still, we continue to engage with the national and the local stakeholders, especially government units. And of course, we also say to strengthen the organization, we have to organize and inspire farmers and mobilize them, not only for PGS, but, like Federica was asking, about market and how to make PGS more viable livelihood for farmers, organic agriculture for that matter, is you have to engage the consumers, know your consumers, engage them more in the process, and also the other stakeholders in that area, in your locality. What's the positive thing that we have with the amended law is that PGS products are specifically for local market only. So we saw that this is a positive action of the government to ensure that the Filipino people are eating organics, and it's not for export market. And of course, there are still calls, that aside from recognizing PGS, the central role of farmers and indigenous people are crucial, in the development of organic agriculture sector in the country. The vibrant economic activity at the local and the district level should be recognized also by the government, that this is what is happening on the ground. And the PGS recognition should be reinforced by provision of other support, not only about PGS, because that's a question of the farmers afterward. When we have recognition and we are accredited by the government, what's next? So it should be supported in terms of production, processing, prioritization of local distribution, and marketing. That's the main responsibility of the government, and civil society organizations and other stakeholders are here to support farmers. But this that I have mentioned are the primary responsibility of the government, with or without PGS in the community. And of course, genuine agrarian reform is still a big issue in the country, and protection of the environment. We have a lot of environmental laws there, but there are also a lot of activities that is destroying the environment. And as we all know, the farmers' livelihood, the farmers, what they are doing is tied to the environment and to the community where they live. And of course, land use conversion is very rampant in the country. So these policies, should be in place as well to fully achieve the policy declaration of the organic agriculture law in the country. So I will not take much of the time. So thank you for listening. Good morning, everyone. Thank you.
Marina, thank you so much for this wonderful contribution. I really like one of your takeaways, to the effect that government supporting PGS certification is actually a clear signal that clean local food production and consumption is being therefore supported. And I think it's an important advocacy line in that respect. I mean, not to distill the other essential messages you have shared. Is there any live questions that we would like to put to Rowena. We've got 5 minutes for some brief Q&A. Otherwise, you can drop it in the Q&A box, and I think Rowena will invite you to respond in the writing there as well. I can't see any hands. So, Rawumi, did you want to come in with anything?
There's a hand. Tibo.
From Teboho. Teboho, our next speaker. Please ask your question.
I hope I'm audible. Good morning, everyone. For those of you
Yeah.
this morning.
Hi.
I just wanted to ask Maria if I saw that on the map that the PGS was quite widespread in the Philippines, and I was just curious to know, do they respond to one PGS, or is it just like each PGS initiative is responsible or operates on its own accord, or is it something that's national throughout the whole of the Philippines?
Yeah, so there are lots of PGS initiatives right now, not only one, but the PGS Pilipinas is a network of PGS initiatives in the country. So the PGS Pilipinas is not actually doing, certification, but we are doing strengthening of PGS groups in the country. So we do forums, meetings, discussions, and trainings for PGS initiatives. So there are a lot of PGS initiatives now. There are a lot of PGS initiative members of PGS Pilipinas, and also those who have been accredited, some sort by the government. So there are lots of PGS initiatives, but the good thing is that this PGS initiative by the government, the format actually came from PGS Pilipinas. So they have included a lot of recommendation by PGS Pilipinas, and we have asked them to by accreditation, we mean not really the formal accreditation like what they are doing with a third-party certification, but they can actually do that using the self-evaluation form of IFOAM. That's only we told them that this is the more this is the true, or this is like the more effective, or it really describes how PGS is, with the self-evaluation form. So yeah, there are a lot of PGS initiatives right now. Yeah, thank you, people.
Thank you. Olawumi, your hand is up. Did you also want to?
Yes, I would like to.
Yeah?
Yeah, thank you so much, Rowena. I would like to ask some questions openly, which I know, and I mean, we've been discussing this. The first question is, do Philippines as a country has a national standard? And if Philippines has a national standard, how does the PGS systems in Philippines relate with the national standard? The second question is, do Philippines has a national movement? And if Philippines has a national organic movement, how does the PGS systems relate with the national movement? And there's no conflict of interest, there's no fight, because this is one of the big things that we see. I mean, I'll talk from West Africa countries, PGS struggling with the national movement, struggling with the PGS system. So how does this work in the Philippines? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Olawumi. Yes, we have a national standard, the Philippine National Standard for Organic Agriculture. And it's like the mother standard of. So they kind of localize Philippine National Standard. They are basing the local standard on the national standard. So it's like the mother standard. And by localization of the Philippine National Standard, I mean that there are specific conditions in the community that are not included in the national standard. So they become more specific, when they crafted the PGS standards. So that's actually the use. But basically, the PGS standard cannot go far, from the national standard. So we always use that as basis. With regards to your second question, there is actually no national organic movement in the country, but we have PGS Pilipinas as the network of PGSs. And we work with many farmer organizations, not national, but some of them are local and some of them are regional organic agriculture movements. We are very clear with them with regards to the roles and responsibility of the PGS movement, what we do as PGS network, and what we can work together as to support the organic farmers. So I think with that, we are very clear with the roles and responsibility, and of course the delineation of role, and where we work together. So I think that's how we were able to strengthen our relationship with these organic agriculture organizations. So yeah, that's what we do. And until now, we make it a point that we always invite them in every meeting, in every discussion, forums, and their response and their insights with regards to the development of PGS and the organic agriculture sector is always included in especially when we have this lobbying not only at the local government but the national government as well. I hope I answered your question, Laomi.
Yes, you have. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you. I want to suggest that we conclude on this for now, and that we can invite our next speaker to make his presentation. So Tebogo, I know you are on the mic. We will not be screening anything, that you will be delivering your presentation live. Before you start, I just want to briefly introduce you. So Tebogo Sepiriti is a 20-year-old young man from Lesotho. He is a farmer by profession as well as a businessman. He's been practicing ecological organic agriculture for several years now, primarily focusing on vegetables and fruits. Tebogo is essentially, a key person in starting PGS and the organic movement in his country, Lesotho. And he works closely with the South African chapter of the Organic Knowledge Hub, funded by GIZ, through which we have established pollinators. So Tebogo is one of our pollinators in this program. And yeah, Tebogo, you will be speaking of this. He's been advocating for the recognition of national organics in his country ever since. So over to you, Tebogo. And I see that Tebogo is no longer in our list of panelists. So we've got some difficulties with networks that side. So I think just in the interest of time, we will just hopefully wait for Tebogo to join us again. And this time we're going to be inviting you, Julie, to speak on behalf of your country experience in Uganda. So having presented Tebogo, I'm going to briefly introduce you now, Julie. So Julie is a daughter of a farmer, and she is from a farming family near Kampala City, the capital city of Uganda. Julie is passionate about organic farming as a true source of life, health, and sustainable socioeconomic transformation. She has studied aquaculture, agriculture, and has a master's degree in agroecology. She is both a practitioner and a professional in the field of organic agriculture, as a vegetable farmer, farmer leader, trainer, researcher, and consultant. Most interesting to us is that she has initiated a fresh veggies PGS with community members in Wakayo district near her family farm, which operated a home delivery scheme around the residential suburbs of Kampala. This is currently under transformation to suit the current trends, community needs, and market opportunities. We very much look forward to your input on this. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Hope you're hearing me now. Thanks very much, Sasha, for the introduction. Based on today's topic, I prepared my slides based on today's topic, and I thank Sasha for that introduction. This first slide shows us what's happening in Africa. I tried to collect some of the labels that we are using in Africa, especially in PGS, but we have one label here from Tunisia, which is not a PGS, it's a third-party label. This shows us where we are in Africa. The Kirimo High Organic is this mark that we are using as East Africa, because we have the East African Organic Product Standard. And all the five traditional East African countries are using it. I know we have new entrants into the East African community. This is a state-owned, it's a voluntary standard, but owned by the state. So this gives us great harmony because it's one of the regional standards following the European Union and the one in the Fijis, the Pacific. So this helps us as a region to be ahead in terms of how we harmonize what we are using and also aligning it to international standard. This one here in the left extreme corner, it's from Morocco. It's a PGS standard. We have what Sawoso has developed for the PGS. You see it's here, PGS endorsed, and what Zambia is trying to progressively develop. So when we look at the overview of what's happening in Africa, we have these statistics available in the FIBIL and IFOAM report that was just released, and in the recent events, it has been mentioned. So these statistics show us that we are progressively.
Sorry, can you go on the slideshow so that everybody can see very well?
It's telling me you're sharing, okay, like this, eh? Okay, is that what you need?
Yeah, thank you.
She means
okay.
bottom right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So these statistics are available, like I've mentioned, in the FIBIL and IFOAM report, but this shows us that we are on a positive trend in terms of progress that we are making in Africa. And we see that there is public commitment. The development, like everyone has mentioned in their respective regions, in Africa, it was mainly produced for export, the organic agriculture that we're involved in the early 90s and 2000s. But now we are seeing commitment from the African Union in the strategic plan, where it is promoting ecological organic agriculture. And you see the figures that show what people are doing. Just to give us a recap, I know most of these were covered in the first session, which I'm sorry I missed. These are the 6 elements, are they 6? The key elements that we have in the PGS. And why I want to highlight them here is that in the subsequent slides, we shall briefly reflect on some of them as we shall go on. But I am very happy that Patricia already gave us highlights and comparisons, because what she has shared is actually as a problem that we are facing on the continent. There is a lot of confusion between ICS and PGS, and you see that in some countries, people are running PGS with a lot of control in terms of organizations who have started it, and it is like a chicken egg issue, where you say if NGOs or organizations are supporting communities to start PGS, where should they stop, or where does the empowerment start? So for our takeaway in this session, these key elements should always be maintained when we are setting up PGS initiatives. These are some of the opportunities that we have in the continent that, like Patricia has given us that overview at global level. We maintain the local context, but we get international recognition. So PGS has to reflect on what's happening, what works for us locally, but maintaining what is within. For instance, if we already know the basics of organic agriculture, and then we continue looking at what standard is available locally, for instance, like I've mentioned in the East African community, then at PGS level, we look at the do's and don'ts within the PGS community itself, echoing what is in the standard. So internally, we generate our simple standard, and then we progress in terms of production and marketing. Then we see that there are opportunities of eventually, maybe at some point, having a Pan-African standard. But while we are not still yet there, at national level, countries have set up their standards. But at regional level, like I've already mentioned about the East African Organic Product Standard, and in Low South Africa, there is SOAS. So like Olaumi was asking Rowena, that the conflicts that happen. So for the PGS to function, it has to be against a given standard. So wherever you have a local standard in your locality, in your country or not, you can look out for what reflects your practices locally, and then you proceed to set up a PGS. And then this can help us to facilitate trade and inclusion of the various initiatives. Which challenges are being faced? Like Rowena's mentioned it, we have weak organization structures of people who are working together. These could be organic farm organizations, they could be CBOs. And then because it is kind of informal, there is lack of direct support. And you see that when there is a funding opportunity, many of these existing structures will miss out because they are informal. So these are some of the challenges that happen. Then when we look at, I've been reflecting on what countries are situated. I'm interested in Tunisia because we are going to be there next year as the first place where the Organic World Congress is going to happen. But when I was looking at their challenges, and in other countries across Africa, you see that the same challenges we face, lack of diversity. People might say we don't have a market, but when the consumers show up, the market has so little. Then the bit of export being export focused, the issue of certification, for instance, in countries like Tunisia, they are basically focusing on export and certification, and it's expensive, we know. Then because the first introduction of organic agriculture or formalizing of organic agriculture is based on export, people think that products have to be expensive. I'm a practitioner, I've been involved in the marketing of our products. What we usually do would make a bi-weekly market survey. We would always make sure that our prices are competitive and we are not per se trying to scare away our consumers. So we would go in the main markets across the city, and then we kind of bench our prices based on what is happening, realistically looking at logistics, and our consumers have always been happy. So it is not that these products always have to be expensive. Actually, some of the products would go at the same price with what is happening in the conventional markets. This doesn't mean that we want to weaken what we are selling in our PGS, but to make sure that these are affordable and realistic, because actually if people won't take them, so are you going to throw them in the trash? Eventually people continue appreciating, and you would see when we set the prices, we've never got a situation where people reject our products because of prices. So we do a win-win situation. Would look at, in our mix, we look at some of the products which can go at the same price with what is in the ordinary market. And then with some of the products which are high value, we hike the market. So when we would prepare our basket schemes, then they would kind of support each other to make sure that we pass in terms of logistics. When you look at the limitations in the Morocco context, it's still the same, like I've just shared in the previous one of Tunisia. Yet, this I quote from Sylviane. Sylviane is in the audience with us. She's an expert in PGS, and she's on the PGS committee of IFOAM. She has done studies in Morocco. You see that these people already have a mark for PGS, but they still have the same challenges, like in a country like Tunisia, where the issues of PGS are very, very new. But after looking at the challenges, what opportunities are there? When we look at how the organic sector has advanced in Africa, looking at the 4 major ways of market orientation, some are policy-driven, some are private or non-government organization and government-driven. Instead of complaining, we should look at these as opportunities. So we should reflect in our local context, what works for us. Where people are supported by policy or government, they should take it as a positive and see how they can anchor on that to make sure that they grow the sector. Where it's an issue of market orientation, we develop